Hello and welcome everyone out there to our next Schoolscape webinar this week. We're really excited to have you here today. For this one, it looked like when I looked at registration, there's a lot of bursars, business managers, financial managers, and a couple of headmasters from school. So welcome. We know that you have a ginormous task in the school, and today I'm hoping that we can introduce a couple of companies to you with some expert thinking in saving, making the school money, and also collecting money that is owed to you. So we have a jam-packed morning. We're going to try and keep it to 45 minutes, but we're really excited about what is in store for us today. So I am going to start by asking Toshiba, Mason, and Snapplify. They are first couple of experts in this area of pens and paper. So we know at school we are going through digital transformation for that, but there's still a great need for paper and for stationery in school, and they're going to give us some good insights on how to save in these areas. So if you can join us on stage, and if Mason and Snapplify can join us on stage. And today I want to say is that it's all about benchmarking. So what are you currently paying and how to bring that cost down, as well as we're going to look at things like tenders. We're saving money at the end of the day. We're going to show you how to take the pressure off tenders, and we're going to do that by inviting Renee on stage later. Here's the tender expert. And then, yeah, we're excited to enjoy this morning with you. So, great. I can see they're getting ready. I have a little getting ready box. Here we go. Let's see who's up first. Hello, Tana. Nice to see you. Tana is from Snapplify. Snapplify is one of our all-time, I think, longest from the school area. Great. Nice to see you. Can you hear that echo? Is that me? All right. Great. I'm going to kick it off. We're just waiting for Clifford to join as well, but that's fine. We're going to start with Felicity and team. This is the team. Hi, Clifford. Welcome on stage. So this is the team from Toshiba Cape Town. Toshiba Cape Town is doing amazing things in the realm of, you can hear from them a couple of times today because they have a whole toolbox of savings for schools. I would like so copiers, which we all know Toshiba for, but they've also rolled out lines in LED lighting and yes, LED lighting and digital lines. Okay, so Team Toshiba, are you ready to go there? Good to go. Someone give me a thumbs up if we're good to go to Toshiba side. Okay. Toshiba seems to be having a slight technical difficulty, so I am going to come to Mason. we'll bring back a focus on Toshiba just now. Mason's is, yeah, I mean, you are all-knowing one of pens and pencils and many other things in the digital realm of schools. So Mason's is an incredible supplier based down in Cape Town, but they are also going to give a good explanation of how they and what they can share nationwide. So Mason's, let's kick it off. How can you reduce the stationery spend for both a school and a parent? I'm a parent, so I'm listening. Take us away.
All right, so bear with me if I just refer to one or two notes while I'm busy. As you know, we do many products, so just wanted to make sure that I cover everything. And of course, 5 minutes is a little bit short to do everything. So I will start with the schools and then I will end with the back to school stuff. But there will be a little bit of an overlap specifically on the stationery side between the two. But if there's anything that I don't cover, then by all means, right at the end, just let me know. So thank you, Schoolscape, for giving us the opportunity. Yeah, let's kick it off. So on the pricing, what people generally do, which we see quite often, is they pick a list that they want to send out. They send it out to a whole bunch of suppliers. They get their costs back. They cherry pick, and they order the cheapest thing from the cheapest guys. So while that is a good short-term strategy sometimes, in the longer term, what we prefer as a complete solution would be then to sit with those schools, because even though the products are the same across the schools, we quite often find that each school will have its unique and own set of issues and set of problems that they want us to deal with. So the best long-term way to save money is through partnering with someone like us that can look at those products. One of the main things to do is to get your product alignment between the product and the price right. So while Pretty's Prit and the Bentex glue stick stays a Bentex glue stick, when you get to that part, you can look at the price and of course the service and stuff. But the big question is, in that particular application, is that the right product? And can you pick an alternative product that can do exactly the same thing at a cheaper price point? So saving money from that aspect is definitely one way. One of the other ways is, if we imagine that product and price line, is to look at things that are below that. So where you might have selected an item that is cheap but doesn't actually last long. And then we can sit with you and go, okay, so those are the products you've selected, but we could possibly look at something that's a little bit more expensive, but that lasts longer. So, an example is buying a car. So you might buy a car that's a little bit more expensive, but it has a better fuel economy and it's cheaper to run, and the services are less. So even though your upfront cost is a little bit more, you're looking at that long-term savings over the length of that product. One of the other things where Masons kicks in quite nicely is to compound savings. So because we have so many categories, you can save on the stationery, but then we can also look at the other areas, whether that be office furniture, the educational and classroom furniture, branded gifts, clothing, cleaning materials, the IT hardware and services, voice over IP, even though Toshiba will touch on that, I'm sure. But so we can look at those things, and you can compound those savings because we can sit with you and work through a saving on each of those categories. And of course, the saving is not just on the actual product you buy, but on things like guarantees and warranties that might be a bit better, even though the price point is pretty similar, whether it's from us or someone else. And then, of course, because of those categories, you can cross-link. So if you look at things like IT labs and we do the furniture plus the hardware, then you can do that as one project and save through that. So I'm not going to touch too much on the IT side. Craig, our IT manager, is doing a webinar next week. So if you on this webinar and you are anything IT related or involved in that side, then please do next week. And next week as well, the guys from Parrot will also be on, and anything Parrot related is also available through Masons. The Parrot is one of the sides that we could possibly do nationally. We are a Western Cape-based supplier, as you've mentioned. We do carry a little bit of stock in Johannesburg for our corporate clients and that kind of thing. So if you are a school that is not in the Western Cape, by all means, please speak to us, and we'll see what we can do for you. For today, anyways, a little bit more on the cost-saving side. If you do not have an account with Masons and you open an account with Masons, we will give you a 250 Rand credit to start you off with. And that'll allow you to sort of try and buy all at the same time to see how we do things. And of course, if there's a school that is buying from us already, thank you. And I'm sure you're asking where your savings are, where we're only creating savings for the newbies. But please get in touch with me and I will reciprocate, and I will make sure that we're not only looking out for those that have not joined us yet.
Awesome. Amazing. Clifford Mason. Clifford. I want to ask you a question quickly on the back to school, kind of savings that you guys do.
Yes.
How is it cheaper for a parent or a school to go and come to you and say, okay, well, we want to jump in on your back to school kind of complete boxes or sets? How does that kind of save schools, that upfront purchase save schools money over buying it out from a couple of different suppliers over the extended sort of term?
Yes. So, okay, the back to school, I'm glad you mentioned that because that was my next topic. The back to school savings are ideally, and they are created through bulk buying. So at the end of the year, there's a whole bunch of schools that come on board. And because the parents of those learners come on board, it allows us to bulk buy at that point in time. So you will already see a cost saving on a standard item versus 2 or 3 months before that for that same item. So that already is a cost saving. But the question of why buy the box from us and not sort of piecemeal as you go along, we often find that when you go to the different places, you're not always getting the same items. You can get 1 or 2 things throughout the term. Obviously, there'll be replenishment and that kind of thing. But there's definitely a saving in buying your items at one point. Another thing to look at one point is that there's a guarantee of stock availability. So because of the bulk buying, the guys bring in the stock in advance. But that doesn't mean that stock's going to remain available. So, it's not always just the price point, but it's availability and it's convenience and all that kind of stuff. We have an online system for the parents and multiple ways of paying, whether they want to pay online or whether they want to EFT or pay when they collect. And that could be at the school, it could be at our offices. And of course, during last year with COVID, we even had a drive-through collection at one of our schools. So those are, yeah.
Awesome.
So it's also the convenience.
Very caring for your schools. I'm going to have to stop you there because
I'm finished anyway.
that is your time up. But yeah, Clifford, thank you. And thank you for a lot of what you did. We saw in lockdown, and Masons really got ahead of distributing what was necessary, devices, this, that, the other, to enable teaching to continue. So yeah, we really back and support Masons, and get hold of them. There is a poll running. So in the middle of each different person's session, we will post a poll, answer the poll, and if you would like either one or multiple of these companies to contact you after. So there's different kinds of questions that will say, do you need help with debt collection? If you click yes, you need help with debt collection, then Brett from Bentley will jump on at a later stage and connect with you in order for you to be able to chat to him directly about debt collection and your school's needs. So for Masons, if you would like Clifford from Masons to get hold of you and discuss how you can save on both stationery and multiple other aspects. Like they said, they have a collective product that they can kit your IT lab out, but they can also provide the furniture for it. So they have a vast kind of portfolio of schools' needs and that they can meet. Great. We're going to move on to Snapplify now. So hello, Tana. Nice to see you. I have 2 quick questions, so it's going to be firing away. So Tana, you're from Snapplify, and Snapplify does a lot of different things, but really cares about providing great resources to both learners and teachers. So current economic climates are tight in schools. We know that schools' budgets are a bit restrained, but we can't kind of restrain our textbook purchases and things like that. So how is Snapplify kind of adding value to schools, keeping in mind that budgets are constrained and it's been tough for schools? How has Snapplify been helping schools in the last year?
Well, thanks so much for inviting us first, Ashley. It's great to meet you. And we're excited to be a part of this webinar today. And then just to answer your question, so Snapplify, supporting educators, schools, and students is inherent at Snapplify. And you'll notice that the score value is weaved into every single thing that we do at Snapplify. So, during last year lockdown, one of the initiatives we had was the free access initiative, which many schools, took part in, where we made thousands of textbooks available for, to students, schools, teachers, grandparents, anyone, that required them. We made them freely available so the students could continue, learning and keep up with the education during that time. And then when it comes to textbooks, we offer schools, a variety of discounts on bulk book orders on our professional and enterprise tier, where schools are purchasing textbooks on behalf of the learners. And, in the instance where the parents are responsible for purchasing textbooks on behalf of the learners, we've introduced a rewards program. And with the rewards program, we give schools 10% back in the form of credit, which they can then use in the Snapplify Engage digital library to purchase any books, and, for the students to access at the school, or to purchase any teacher guides, or, to purchase textbooks where students cannot afford to purchase their own textbooks. And so that is, our procurement setup at the schools. And then another way in which we support educators specifically is through our teacher benefits program, which is available on the Engage platform on any of the tiers. And, if any school signs up, any of the teachers on that platform then receives access to a wide variety of free teacher guides. So when it comes to textbooks, that is how Snapplify, endeavors to support educational institutions and students as well as educators.
Awesome. So I have another follow-up question on that. So you mentioned the digital library feature. So this is obviously now mostly for the students, but can you tell us a little bit more about this? And with the idea of cost saving in mind, how does a digital library compare to a school purchasing paper textbooks, per se? How is that savings worked into a digital library?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so the platform offers any school that's signed up on Engage access to an extensive digital library. And, within the library, there's leisure reading books, free academic supplementary materials, study guides, as well as a few teacher guides. And, it spans from foundation phase reading books all the way up into tertiary education or even professional development. So it's for both teachers and educators. The school can make use of it for both. So for your students, they will have access to immediately to 50,000 free ebooks. And for, the educators, if the school is interested in purchasing any books to further the professional development of teachers, they could make them available for the teachers within the digital library as well, so they could, keep up with any professional development. And then going back to your question about how, it saves money for schools and adds value, as you know, a digital library saves schools from having to physically or allocate a physical space or manage a physical library, which we've seen that many schools are actually currently struggling with this during this time. And it also saves the staff from the admin that is, attached to actually running a digital library. So the management, the functionality, the tools in the library is simple and seamless to use. And then it also negates issues, such as losses or damages. So really saving schools money in the long run. And so what we've done is we've designed all of our solutions with educators and students in mind. And regardless of where the schools are on the digital journey, we've ensured that there's a solution to support or add value to any school, basically.
Awesome. And we do see you doing so well in the school space. So thank you, Snapplify, for all your hard work with educators. What I can say is I've never seen Snapplify take a decision that wasn't ultimately 100% to benefit schools and their learners. And they do a lot to support teachers. So if your school doesn't know about Snapplify as of yet, or isn't using it, or is wanting to explore the space of moving to a digital library and having those resources available for your schools and learners, please, on the polls, click yes, you would like to get get involved with Snapplify, you'd like to get connected to Snapplify, and we will do so from our side. So thank you for engaging in those polls. Keep an eye on those polls, because every session we will have a different poll question to come up, either just to have a bit of engagement or for you to get connected. Right, we're going to go back to Felicity and Team Toshiba. So the first question I have, and we're going to have them on now, and we'll see them a bit later again. But Felicity, everything photocopiers. So how do we know? I'm going to use the word ripping off, because often in this area we do find that schools are way overcharged.
Hey Ash, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so we're talking about Toshiba, and we're saying, okay, so great. We want to speak about the possibility of schools being ripped off by their photocopier companies. It's a harsh word, but in reality, this is a massive operational cost for schools, and it's one area we would really like to see schools save in the long run. So Felicity, how do we benchmark on photocopiers, and how do we know, what can we do if we feel like we do realize that we're being ripped off by a photocopier company that we're likely in contract in?
Okay. Hi everyone, and thank you Ash for having us. It's always a joy. So thank you for that. You know, to answer your question, I think every school principal wants to feel like they're doing the best deal for their school possible. However, the question I think to be asked, and what you were asking, is, are you getting the best value for money deal for your school? And do you feel like you're being overcharged? So we at Toshiba Cape Town have been involved with schools for many years, having won the NBConsult Tenders for 4 years in a row. And we've seen invoices for rentals ranging from 40,000 Rand a month, which is ghastly, down to 4,000 Rand a month, and everything in between. So I think it's a very valid point. Also, we've been involved with an auditor who audits WCEDs, about 60 WCED schools, and every now and again he will call us in and say, can you please assist the school and this principal? They would like to know if they, if the invoices are out of control and how to bring down their prices. So it's a very pertinent point to discuss. In our company, Toshiba Cape Town, normally, or as a rule, only directors deal with schools and engage with schools, only because it eliminates overly ambitious reps making a lot of money in the process. So we say, we will deal with them, and this is our cap. We don't go beyond a certain percentage, which is very conservative. So we are happy to offer that to schools, and to offer, if a school is feeling like they would like to get a comparative sense of where they're at, we'd be delighted to engage with them. I think the big thing, Ash, is that schools must be careful not to sacrifice service for cheap prices, because at the end of the day we all know where the pressure rolls, and it rolls upwards to the principal. So at exam time, when machines are breaking down, the copier provider is not providing machines to carry the load, the machines are broken down, the principal always gets to hear about it. And I think that's one of the things one must be careful when you're dealing with copier companies. Make sure you're dealing with a reputable copier company who's got plenty of standby copiers to assist, and who would be involved in getting to the school in a timeliest manner, and supplying toner and supplying inks in a timeliest manner. So that's important, to have a quick response time. But what I think is really important is having a properly spec'd machine. So for example, a 1-ton bakkie can only carry a 1-ton load. So say you have an 85 copier minute machine, which is considered in the copier industry a high volume machine. it can only do 7 million copies in its lifespan. So over a 60-month period, if you take that copier out on a rental of 60 months, you'll be doing about 116,000 copies a month over a 60-month period. However, on a 36-month period, you'll be doing about 130,000 copies. So we have a machine, it's called a ComBlack FW120. It's actually a production machine, 120 copies a month, and it can do literally 160,000 copies a month. So it's important to spec your copier carefully that it can carry the load for the full rental period. And if you don't have that capacity, you find that the machines begin to break in their 36th month. They start to, tongues are hanging out, the machines are struggling, the technicians are coming out every, week to take care of the machines. And you'll find that in that situation, the copier has just got too much load for the period of time. Then the reps begin to push the principal to settle and to get a new rental contract out to get new machines. And the issue with that is that the reps will tell the principal, don't worry, this it's a preferential settlement, and there's a discount, but the problem is they simply add that 24-month contract that's left onto the next contract or roll over. So it's a problem because the costs then just simply increase. And then there's also the issue of escalations, Ash, where a lot of reps will quote on a 15% escalation instead of a 0% escalation. Now, the upside of a 0% escalation is that the principal knows what his costs are from month 1 to month 60, and it's not going to jump up every single month. Every single year. So that's an important thing to be able to budget for the full period of the contract. But like I said, I'm happy to assist with any school who is struggling with costs, and it's a free service. So.
Wonderful. Felicity, thank you so much. So you've heard if you need help benchmarking in the area of photocopiers, we're hearing what a big cost it can be to your school, but it doesn't need to be. And over the 3-year period that you kind of run the contract, the costs can stay the same and your copiers can last. There's nothing more frustrating than trying to get a photocopier that is broken to work. So thank you so much, Felicity and team. We'll hear a little bit back from the team at Toshiba later when they talk about LED lighting and digital lights. But next, we're going to move a little bit away from the paper and pen scenario, and we're going to focus for all of the finance gurus and the schools out there. We know we need you so much. So for all the businesses that are dealing with quotes and trying to make money for the school and fundraising and debt collection and everything that falls onto your table, we are going to address some of the most important topics in this area of school finances for you. So welcome on stage, Brett and Willem from D6 and Rene from SchoolAdvisor Tenders, which is a partner company of Schoolscape who hosts this event. We're going to talk a little bit on making money and saving money and getting money that is owed to us. So firstly, we're going to bring up front Willem from D6. Most of you will know D6, not for what Willem is about to discuss with us now. So hold on to your seats. This is going to be exciting. So if you use D6 at the moment in your school just to communicate with, there is something rather exciting coming for you. Willem, I have a question. Most schools are using D6 now, but most schools are not using D6 to make money. I think they're just seeing the money go out of the school to D6. How can schools use D6 to actually make money for their school?
Thanks, Ashley. So maybe just to take the answer, I'm just going to take it a bit back in terms of what we do, so that the listeners can understand why we've implemented our reward structure where schools can actually start generating income. We believe that effective education can only occur if it's managed within an effective school. And for effective schools to flourish, we are of the opinion that a school must have access to sound management platforms. You can't manage a business if you don't have access to your data, and if you don't have a good management platform on which you manage the organization, which a school is very complex. So from a D6 perspective, our core intent in terms of what we're trying to achieve is to create effective schools from a managerial perspective. And that's why we've developed our school management platform D6 Plus, which has its cloud-based environment with all the primary managerial environments that is required, all the administrative, finance, curriculum, communication, integration with LMS platforms, etc. So that's our management platform. But our intent is that not only the richest schools should be able to afford us, but any school should technically have access to our platform. So we had to define a way of how to ensure that the affordability of the platform is that the cost is not a burden in terms of the affordability, and it becomes a self-sustaining funding environment where we're trying to create our platform so that it can create income for the school, which will offset the cost. We never give something for free because we believe if we give something for free, there's no accountability. But in utilizing the platform in the correct way, we want schools to be able to make a profit out of the utilization of the platform. And that's where we've introduced what we call D6 rewards to enable schools that if they use our product, they should be able to make money out of it, and it shouldn't be a cost burden for them. There are three ways of which how schools can make money out of the platform. We've got through our application that our parents connect to the school. In the application, we've got certain banner advertising which runs on the platform. It's non-intrusive because I know advertising is in some ways a bit of a swear word, and we also don't allow any weird advertisers. So we don't promote the new Black Label or Castle special for the month on the platform. We're trying to follow a methodology from an ad perspective to only allow advertising which is beneficial to the end users within that school. So there are three primary ways in which schools can generate income. First of all is obviously we share everything that we commercialize on the platform. We share back to the school so that the school can benefit from a cost perspective. There's banner ads running through our platform which parents can see, and all of those banner ads have a click-through capability which we track on our environment. These banners are per school, so your local plumber or your hairdresser across the street or any national company can select to advertise their services on the school's environment, and we share a portion of the income back to the school in order to get it to be self-funding and a sustainable offering. The second opportunity that we've got is within our application, we've launched something new called Local Listings, which is a listings platform for local services. So child-specific, as an example, we've got something called tutoring, and within tutoring, your local business can list their business on the platform so that parents can actually have access to this. It's similar in a way as newsletters or your advertising next to your rugby field, etc. We're just now digitized it so that companies can advertise within the digital realm of the school where parents engage and then can have access to these services. And then we've launched a new one recently also called Rides, which enables parents within a community to create rides where they are driving to, and other parents can add their children to that specific ride if they cannot go to that specific event. So as a parent, I can book a trip. I can see that Ladine van Zyl is driving to Melkbos, and I can say that I want to add my daughter and my son to that trip. I can choose the address where it should be picked up, and I can book for that trip, which means that obviously from a logistical perspective, we support the school and their parents to eradicate logistical issues, but we also then share a portion of that income back to the school. So those are in a nutshell the three main elements in terms of how schools can share, but it's important for us that the school must benefit through, first of all, being more effective. Secondly, the parents should benefit through getting their information that's relevant to them. And then thirdly, businesses in community should have the ability to reach the parents that is in their community to the benefit of that environment. So it becomes a symbiotisch, that's the Afrikaans word. Everyone should win.
I'm going to say the English one and I'm going to get stuck now. Symbiotic.
Symbiotic. Exactly.
environment. I love that. I'm a strong believer in community, and we can help one another. And I feel like in South Africa, we have a great sense of doing so and working towards that. So thank you for, enabling our schools to create community around our families and our learners that we can help one another. So I'm looking forward to when sports, trips and travel really kick in again, that the parents will be able to use those ride apps. I certainly will enjoy it with my kids to pop them into a car and know that they're safe and sound and they're with other parents in the school. So thank you so much, Willem, for that. Any
Thanks.
final questions before we move on to SA Tenders?
Maybe just a last comment. We should change our mindset in terms of software. That software should be able to generate income, but still make us more effective in terms of how we operate. And that's the core, not just to make money, but to be more effective. But it should be able to be a profitable venture.
Wonderful. I couldn't agree.
Ashley.
Thank you, and thanks to D6 for all they're doing in helping us stay connected in this time. So we have posted a poll on D6. If this is news to you on their rewards programs and you'd like to find out more about what D6 is doing and their full capabilities, even if you're really working with D6 just on the communication side, or if you have not ever ventured out to get hold of D6, please click their poll. Yes, you'd like the school to start making some money out of your D6 app, and Willem and his team will get hold of you to have a good conversation to see how to do so. Awesome. Renee, welcome. Renee is from SchoolAdvisor Tenders. Renee, I'm going to jump in and ask the first question. So we all know that historically in schools we've used the 3-quote process, very good process, but we feel like we might have cracked something even better. So why should schools be using tenders instead of quotes, Renee?
Thank you so much for having me, Ashley. But before I start answering your question, I think we need to ask ourselves what we believe has, or the most successful organizations have in common. So what function do they have, the most successful organizations? And that is a procurement function. A procurement function plays a fundamental role in helping organizations spending money professionally. And SchoolAdvisor Tenders, in collaboration with Sweet Spot, the procurement company, is indeed the only procurement function for South Africa's schools. So back to your question, simply put, tenders help schools make more informed purchasing decisions, as well as generate more savings compared to quotes. The reality is, when schools ask for quotes, they do so against a backdrop of vaguely described requirements. And that is a problem for two reasons. One, will receive prices that aren't really comparable with one another. The vaguer your description, the more assumptions your supplier will make. So if you're asking for a red car, one will quote for a Porsche and the other one will quote for a Mercedes or a Volkswagen. And the second problem is that quotes don't really allow you to assess the supplier's capabilities, which means that you are opening the door for unnecessary risk. For example, it could be financial risk. If you haven't assessed the supplier's financial viability and it goes bust, it could end up costing you a lot more money. But there's also a reputational side to it. If you don't do your necessary due diligence, you may end up contracting with a supplier who may be imposed in business ethics allegations, which again reflects badly on your school. So those are some of the two key disadvantages of quotes. With tenders, we help in the following ways. First and foremost, we draft accurate service and specifications so that any supplier that is invited to a bid can offer quotes that match your requirements, nothing more and nothing less. We also evaluate suppliers on multiple parameters, not just on price, which is the typical component in quotes, but we also evaluate them on base evaluations on whether they have a good financial standing or if there are any other risks associated to them. But crucially, we also do a questionnaire and assess their capabilities in terms of their ability to perform a given service that match your requirements. The third component, which is great about tenders, is that if used properly, it is a fantastic tool to generate competition among suppliers. That means schools actually get much more for their money and are able to extract a lot more value from their suppliers. And last but not least, I think it's also important to say that with tenders, it is important to enshrine any good supplier relationship into an agreement. There are many schools out there that contract with suppliers basically on a serviette, and that is not really the right way of doing things, and unfortunately can result in ugly misunderstandings later down the line if it's unclear what's been agreed upon upfront. So, in summary, with quotes, schools don't get the best deal out there, even though there's the conception that they can. It actually results in them making uninformed purchasing decisions, which leads to more costs today, but also in the future.
Awesome. Renee, I'm going to jump in there. I want to keep time. I want to ask you another really important question. And that is something that all schools then can tomorrow start doing. I want to encourage schools, if you are thinking of doing a tender, or if you are doing some kind of big procurement and a tender could fit into it possibly, or you want to know if a tender could work for it, please click in the poll section and we can get Renee to jump on the call with you to discuss the possibility of hand-holding and helping you with the process of a tender in your school. Renee, I'm going to pose a next question to you. I'd like to, this is something schools could then tomorrow start to do in their schools, but on negotiation. So my initial introduction to Renee was the master of all negotiation. That's how someone introduced Renee to me. So this is a fitting question for Renee. But are schools, in your opinion, are they negotiating a big enough discount from their suppliers? And can you give us some handles on how to do so? Okay, so before I talk about that, schools can embark on their tender journey and it doesn't cost them an extra dime. The way SchoolAdvisor Tender works is that we don't charge fees to schools. We charge a small declared fee to a supplier that you end up appointing. Now, in regards to savings, on average, we make schools roughly 25% in savings, which includes the declared service fee that suppliers will be paying. So how do we do it? SchoolAdvisor Tenders in collaboration with SweetSpot. SweetSpot brings with it incredible amount of procurement expertise from some of the world's leading companies, which is exclusively and only available to South Africa schools. So what does that mean? It means that for the first time, schools will benefit from big business expertise and tools that previously simply wasn't available. And that also means that with SchoolAdvisor Tenders, schools will be gaining access to a much deeper understanding of costs. So we are able to negotiate much more effectively there, as we do have a much deeper understanding from cleaning to security services and, of course, everything in between. But we are also seasoned negotiators, and that means we know how to create competition through a process, but we also have access to some really great tools and techniques which are applied by some of the most successful multinationals out there, which we are now using to aid schools in getting the best possible deal that they can. Awesome, awesome. Renee, thank you so much. We are excited to see that schools are starting to do tenders. From our side, we're starting to see how we can save schools money, a whole lot of it. So if your school is thinking about embarking or thinking about wanting to start the journey of using tenders to actually save money like Renee is talking about and get the best supply at the end of the day, please click in the poll and we will be sure to get hold, well, Renee will be sure to get hold of you and to start that discussion. So awesome. Thank you so much, Renee. Thank you for your time. Nextly, in the realm of finances, our last question in this section is going to go to Brett Bentley from Bentley Credit Control. So Brett, this is an interesting one. So I know you guys have a lot to say on debt collection and how schools can go about getting debt in. But this question, I think, is a very pertinent question to the times. We've seen a lot of schools struggling with school fees. And the question is, does it make sense to hand over your parents on fee collection? Can you give us some insight here?
Yes, yeah, look, it's quite a multi-dimensional question that it might sound a little bit like a no-brainer. Yes, schools are battling financially, and when tough times we should be handing over. But there's a little bit more to it than that. Yes, I mean, as a private school, you've got a contractual right to sue the parents in terms of your agreement. If you're a public school, you've got a right in terms of the South African Schools Act to recover your fees. So there is absolutely the rights there. But sometimes we see some schools, for want of a better expression, not quite getting it right. So, for example, we've even encountered some outliers where the school will say, no, we're not handing over. We handle our collections internally. We don't hand over. And that's not a sound financial decision to actually make, because yes, if you look at our company, for example, we've got a specialist school division, but we've also got a specialist banking division. Now, those particular banks have got wonderful legal resources internally. They've got wonderful call centers phoning the debtors for payment, but they still reach a point where whatever they're doing is not working well enough, and they need to take the further step of handing the matter over to us. So in the same sense, any schools that are perhaps still taking this approach, no, we do it internally. It's not a sound financial decision, and it's something that you should perhaps review and reconsider. The second thing, obviously, that we've seen in these times is the financial situation, and schools having, to some degree, empathy with certain parents that were retrenched in terms of the lockdown and the situation. And absolutely, if a parent is unemployed and unable to pay, whatever the situation is, those perhaps you can hold back on for longer or whatever the situation is. But ultimately, there's a lot of parents out there that can pay and that are not paying, and that are perhaps using the current economic circumstances as an excuse not to prioritize the payment of school fees. Because unfortunately, when it comes to budget, school fees sort of tend to rank down the bottom of the priority list. So you've got to take decent steps to enforce it. The third thing that I'd like to just say that we do notice is in some schools, there seems to be a lack of structure in terms of their handover times. So we'll have certain schools that for a year won't hand over any matters, and then all of a sudden there's a massive matters, or they won't even hand over for 2 years, and then all of a sudden they're wanting to hand over. And again, from a financial management perspective, that is not sound financial management structure. You wouldn't find it in commercial, and similar practices need to be employed by schools to have a firm structure. So in terms of that, I know you did send out an email a couple of weeks ago there, which included one of our free spreadsheets that encourages schools to manage their finances a little bit better. And I know a lot of people, I see a couple of names there that I know that have obtained the spreadsheet. But for those of you that perhaps haven't obtained the spreadsheet, I'm just going to pop up on the chat there a little link where you can go and download this financial spreadsheet for schools. And on there are also some recommendations in terms of how and when you should be looking at your debt and your handover periods to develop a bit more structure in terms of handovers. So that's sort of basically in a shell the answer to what would seem to be a very simple question.
Awesome. Thank you, Brett. We know that they are debtors is never a very simple question, and especially when you're working with parents and you care about their kids. So this is a tricky one, and it's also one of the reasons why I agree with you that it should be an external professional party that could deal with things like this in a school. And we know that Bentley is out there to help schools with this. So if you would like Bentley to come in and have a discussion about what you can do with your outstanding school fees, then there's a poll running. Please click on the poll, and you can also see what other schools are saying. So it might be interesting for you if you don't want to necessarily engage in the polls, but go and have a look at what the other schools are saying, and you'll get a good kind of feel of maybe where your school is at in terms of this, and just sharing the load. We're all going through these things at the moment, and it'll be good to, maybe a little refreshing to see the load that has been shared amongst schools. We're all sitting with similar problems, but there's great companies out there that can help you. Right, we are going to move away from finances. So we're going to bring back Toshiba to discuss some more areas of operational costs with us. And then we're also going to bring on a company called NBConsult. Now, NBConsult, you might know for providing you with Microsoft licenses, with great services in this area. But today they're actually focusing on connecting. Sorry, just could you mute there, please, from a bit of an echo going on there. I'm going to give them a minute to do so. Okay, awesome. So on operational cost savings, so I know that we have a great need for connectivity in our schools now, but it comes at a great cost often, with a lot of difficulties in actually having to put a lot into the school to get it up and running, and then to service it running. And we brought on really the professionals in this regard. They're a brilliant company servicing many schools in South Africa, very successfully in this. And so we are going to, hello Nicholas and hello Chris, nice to have you with us. They're from NBConsult, like I mentioned, and I'm going to start by just throwing out the first question. How do we benchmark on connectivity? There's many options and there's varying prices. So what is a good benchmark for a school to have a good line that is stable?
Hi, Ashley. First of all, there's no such thing as a benchmark. No connectivity is created equal. Fiber to the home is not something you want to use in a business or a school, because there's something on it that's called contention. And contention, think about it as a pipe, and the more people on the same pipe, you can't get your speeds. So essentially you're paying what you get. So for what you get. So if you have fiber to the home and you a school, your learners and your faculty are not going to get the connection speeds and be able to connect to things as they would. Then the other thing is, sorry, I'm just reading off my list here. So if you're going to if you're just going to need access for your teachers to browse the internet, check their mails, and just build their content for classes, it's very different to a situation where you have a hybrid environment, where schools now go into Office 365 and schools where teachers and pupils start running along those practices and those applications.
Awesome. Chris, are you there?
Yeah, Nick, did you want to go and bring a bit more onto that?
Yeah, so I say this as a parent with watching my children doing hybrid learning, where some of my children, it sounds like I have a whole herd of them. I actually have 2 children, and sometimes they'll be doing different things depending on what the schools are doing.
It feels like a herd, hey, Nicholas.
Sorry, say again?
I said, does it feel like a herd? Nevertheless.
When you try to get them to school in the morning, it sounds like there's many more of them than we think. And I won't even raise the thing of we won't believe everything that the school tells us if the school doesn't believe everything that our children tell us. But from a learning from home point of view, we can see our teachers struggle where they have to compete with really bad bandwidth when they are trying to present a topic, and a student might be at home because they have to be at home, and connectivity is bad. And we see our schools bitten with multi-year contracts buying the wrong thing. And as Chris mentioned, often that tends to be a fiber to the home or a broadband product, as opposed to something that's more of a business bandwidth experience. So if we can counsel our schools, and we know that a lot of the time we are competing against pen and paper while we're trying to raise digital literacy at the same time. One of the things that's really important in all of that is the online experience, and that only comes from the predictability of the experience. Because ultimately, we want to lower the friction for our learners and take out any possible factor that can raise that friction. So with that, it's difficult for us to say what the benchmark is in terms of rands and cents. It's much rather the benchmark is around the experience, and that's both for our teachers as well as for our learners.
Awesome, awesome. I'm going to just want to throw a follow-up question in there. You have 2 minutes maybe to answer it. But how do you ensure you're building a long-term solution in connectivity that's not going to cost you year on year on year? We often hear about schools ripping out all the infrastructure, putting new in, and then 2 years later doing it again. So if you just in 2 minutes can tell us how it is that we can ensure that we're building well when we build on our connectivity.
Gosh, we've had a lot of analogies around cars and bakkies, and a lot of them are the same in terms of networking. So we find that schools are often surprised with the amount of infrastructure that they need to have a stable experience for their learners, which isn't as much as you may think, but also isn't as little as you think. So with that, we would counsel you to get in an ISP such as ourselves, who understands a learning environment and understands the difference between providing bandwidth to a location as well as distributing it, and how you want to be able to use that infrastructure for a minimum of 3 years, understanding that the amount of bandwidth that you would want to use can increase. And that means an option for flexible contracting, as well as an option for growing the infrastructure at a predictable price point as and when you need to.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sorry, Ashley, can I just add something onto that as well? So
if you can do it in 20 seconds, you may.
No problem with that. So with any service provider, you must keep them liable and responsible for providing for what you are actually expecting. So if you're not getting what you need out of a service provider, it's rather than get stuck in a contract that you don't want, rather look for a service provider or get a consultancy in that can tell you what you need, and look for a supplier that can provide you with the correct bandwidth you need going forward for your school.
Absolutely. And I think that applies to so many areas of our school and not just to connectivity. Great. We're going to head back to Team Toshiba now. Thank you, NBConsult. If you'd like NBConsult to come in and do a bit of an assessment on your school and see how they can help you with your connectivity needs, knowing that this is a growing need in schools, please go to the poll and click that you'd like to connect with them. And as simple as that, they will get hold of you in a time convenient to you to discuss this further. So welcome back, Tommy and Jacques. We're going to hear from you now. But we're going to move on to 2 quick operational costs to schools that we find that are very important. We're getting a lot of questions around. One being digital lines, and the other one being a new buzz in school of LED lighting, coupled with that and a bit of solar. But firstly, let's look at digital lines. So if you're sitting now with old PBX systems and things like that, what do we do with that if we want to come over to digital lines? Why are digital lines more effective and efficient? And is it worth moving away from the old traditional lines that are going into schools?
Right, good morning, I'm Tommy, I'm from Toshiba Cape Town Technical Department. To answer your question there, actually, the first thing that's happening now is obviously Telkom has informed everybody of discontinuation of its copper services, be it the analog telephone lines, be it the ADSL connectivity, be it ISDN, basic rate voice, and also for data. Now this has got everybody scrambling around how do we get connectivity to our schools and businesses. We have ventured into the market now, and we're using LTE, fiber, or microwave links to supply connectivity to the schools and environments instead of the copper setup. We physically moved away from on-site PABXs because the main suppliers out in the world now are shutting down manufacturing of this. Be it Panasonic, Samsung, Siemens, they've all indicated that they're shutting down this. We run a hosted PABX platform now where we supply schools and businesses infrastructure without cabling, without on-site PABXs. This drastically brings down the cost to the schools and the businesses because, I mean, cabling infrastructure, this all gets expensive. So now we use our LTE environment. We have LTE phones that run on SIMs, and we create a hosting environment where we have all the features and functionality of an on-site PABX hosted in the cloud without the added costs of having equipment on site. The other big saving is obviously we don't need technicians to come on site every time there's an issue. All these products can be remotely supported and changes in that done without any additional costs to the client, sending out technicians and vehicles, etc., etc. We've also now moved into the unified communications platform where our cellular phone can work as an extension also on our network. So effectively the client can bring his own device to the office and his extension can run off his cell phone on a SIP client, which also saves you money. The major saving of all of this is mainly on net calls. We supply that for zero. So anyone within that network calling each other, there's no cost to those calls, which is a massive saving. Also, the other problem we have at the moment is obviously ESCOM and load shedding. All our systems come with power backups. So the phones, if you go down, you can either connect your phone to your laptop or we can supply you power banks, plug it in, and you survive right through that load shedding period. Okay.
Well, yes, thank you. That is in an environment where schools were going online, offline, in school, out of school. I had a couple of the bursars I was chatting to saying, well, they're just carrying on with their work because they have digital lines and all the parents are panicking and phoning the school. They don't have anyone's cell phone numbers, but in the very least, they can still get hold of the office from their home. So I think that's an amazing, amazing solution in our times and something schools definitely need to look into more. Finally, and our last question for the day is around LED lighting. This will not only save the schools money, but it's also highly efficient for our learners to learn. So Jacques, if you want to take us through why LED lighting is really financially worth the effort of putting in, and what are the benefits to both school in finances and learners in learning?
So to start off with, LEDs are a good solution for schools. Just by replacing your current lights, fluorescents and metal highlights, over to LEDs, you will have a 50% saving on your lighting electricity costs. And based on that, you still have, most of the schools have a permanent electrician that comes out to site to fix lights on a weekly or monthly basis. With LEDs, once you've done that, you've got 5 years that you don't have to worry about lighting. They just keep on working. And if you look at it, most of the school halls have big high bays, which draws a ridiculous amount of energy, and if you change that over to LED, you still have the same lighting levels. The other thing is with fluorescents, you get a lot of flickering, and some of the cheaper LEDs will do that as well. With the quality that we offer, the students focus better with the type of light that we do, and there's no flickering. So basically during the day when they're in those classrooms, they tend to focus more on the work that's happening, and then once they're outside in natural daylight that they get, they can relax a little bit more, but once back in the classrooms, they can start focusing again. For the schools that's looking at going to solar, the first step is to switch over to LED. You first have to reduce your load, otherwise your solar expense is going to be astronomical. So to start off with, change to LED, and then you can do your solar. The other option that we also offer is to finance your LED option, so that it can be basically paid over a period of a couple of months or years, and then you don't have that initial layout that you have. The other option is also for hostels and boarding schools where they've got geysers. We've got a small kit that we basically install 3 solar panels with a smart metering, and that basically monitors the geyser to use the sun's power to heat up the geyser during the day instead of using normal electricity. And then only once the heat drops beneath a certain temperature, it will start using ESCOM power again. But overall, it will use the most efficient use out of the sun's energy.
Awesome, thank you so much. So we've had a lot of queries from schools around solar of late, and so as you've heard, first step to putting solar into your schools would be to change to LED lighting, and then you'll be able to measure an adequate amount of solar energy we would need to be able to draw for the school. So that's a great first step. Thank you for that. And yeah, I think that Toshiba Cape Town has a handful of really exciting different operational solutions that can save your schools a lot of money. So if you would like to get hold of the team in any of the specific areas, please find their poll, click on which area you would like to get involved in. And we'd like them to kind of give you a call around, and then yeah, easy as that. You can start your journey to saving in operational areas for your school. That is a wrap up on today. So thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you for staying with us. And I hope that this is a couple of tricks and tips on benchmarking, and if you're being overcharged in an area, or how to reduce your costs in certain areas. We look forward to seeing you next week, next week. We will be having a webinar called I keep wanting to say Battle of the Bands, Battle of the Hardware Companies. So if your school is looking for different kinds of hardware for your school, you're looking to procure in areas, join us next week for that, where we have some amazing companies speaking on some of the new tech that is absolutely cost effective for schools. That would be the best options for your learners and teachers. So thank you to team at Toshiba, thank you NBConsult, for Masons, D6, SchoolAdvisor Tenders, Bentley. It's been jam-packed today in Masons. Thank you for all your time and all your energy and all the effort you're putting into saving schools money. Please go through the polls, connect with the companies you would like to connect with, and we know that every single one of them is reputable, credible, and going to help you run your school in the best way possible. What a big job. So thank you for all you're doing out there, and have a great day further.